topic, I did my dissertation in strategy, and let me have that bias, and uh, I'll start with something interesting on strategy, a fundamental piece on strategy. So, what exactly is strategy all about? If you ask an academician, and even if you go and talk to a practitioner, their fundamental requirement is almost same. Both of them are trying to figure out how can they help an organization accrue more rent, or in simpler words, what makes one organization do better in the market than another organization. Now, research has looked at this problem, and you can talk about airline industry, you can talk about mining industry or fast food restaurant, and they are trying to understand what one organization, how does it differ from another organization. So why is McDonald's different than KFC or Burger King? What is the thing that makes one organization have better returns than the other? And that is what exactly the practice wants. How do you actually make an organization where you are able to compete in the market successfully and enjoy the returns of your efforts? So there is one very fundamental theory that comes here, and that goes by the name resource-based view. And this fundamental theory, propounded in 1980s, though it has historic leads moving from 60s, but some of the early papers talking precisely about resource-based view were in 1983, the Warnerfeld paper, and then in 90, when we had this paper by Jay Barney talking about resource-based view, and since then a lot of research has gone into this field. So what does resource-based view talk about? So a resource-based view tries to answer this idiosyncrasy in performance, why one firm performs differently from another firm, by saying that, hey, the resource or the people, the practices, the assets that A organizations hold vis-a-vis B organization is different, and so their performance is different. So essentially, how well you perform in an external environment is largely depends on what constitutes organization A and what constitutes organization B. So in essence, resource-based view theorists and researchers tend to come back and say, you know what, how you perform is determined largely by what you hold within your organization. And so if you look at this slide that I have for you moving forward.
I put on this slide 3 organizations, Delta, Southwest and JetBlue as an example. These are 3 firms in the aviation sector in US. They can be very well Indian firms like Indigo, GoAir or Vistara. Now, if you are a strategy lead or if you are a researcher, one of the fundamental things you are trying to understand is that what makes them perform differently in the market. What is it that one firm tends to do better than the other? And this has been one of the most fundamental problems for any strategy researcher. So in response to this fundamental question of what makes one firm performs better than the other, there is a very strong line of research which goes by the name resource-based view, which argues that it is the resources which a firm hold within itself that determines its performance in the market. Firms are nothing but bundle of resources, and these resources can be physical capital, human capital, or organization capital as put up on this slide. And the way that these resources are held with the firm and organized by them is what results in the difference of activities and the difference and finally the outcome that the firm enjoys in the marketplace. So in the seminal paper of 1991, Barney talked about of how resources are a source of competitive advantage, and he talked about four properties of a resource which if available within a firm can provide sustainable competitive advantage. And he talked about WRIN: valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. So the first being valuable, a resource can provide sustainable competitive advantage if it meets the first test that it is valuable, it is productive, and it is critical to the final outcome. Uh, it is rare, so that not all or many organizations have access to the same resource. It is inimitable, which is to say that if I have that resource and it is critical for success in this market, my competitor does not have access to the same resource, and so it is difficult to imitate the resource. This lends you with greater competitive advantage. And finally, non-substitutable, which intends to say that if I hold on to a resource which is key to getting competitive advantage in a market, then there is no substitute for my competition to come up with an alternate resource. So they'll have to fight with me, they'll have to compete with me for the same resource, and only then will they be able to compete in the market. So when Barney looked at these four propositions, he talked about a resource to be valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable to actually lend more credence in building a sustainable competitive advantage. So let's look at a couple of examples here. This slide puts out two logos. One is McDonald's, the other is Nornickel. If I were to ask you what makes McDonald's more successful, many of you might come back and say, Shantam, they have got good food selection, they have got good ambience. I'll say that, go and look at their balance sheet. One of the very interesting things that the balance sheet would show you is that McDonald's has got great access, a lot of value locked in real estate. Now, this is the prime piece of land where McDonald's has invested in several years and decades. Where if you're in downtown New York or if you're in Connaught Place or any of these high-end locations, you'll find a McDonald's. Now think about it. Over past several decades, this piece of real estate, the value has gone up tremendously. But by virtue of having bought it earlier, McDonald's is now reaping its reward. If you were to enter this market, you would need to be in locations where people go for fun and frolic. Now the real estate in these places is extremely pricey. And now this is becoming a barrier of entry for other competition who are trying to compete with McDonald's. McDonald's is already there, and the ones who are trying to enter needs to find space and need to invest in real estate. Look at Nornickel, a mining firm, and here again, if there are only A, B, C, or a few select places where you can mine a particular mineral, and if you already have bought out those places, isn't that a natural entry to barrier? And these then becomes your sources of competitive advantage. Let's look at another set. I have put out here for you Maggi and Lilly, a pharmaceutical firm. Maggi, as many of you would be aware, is one of the most popular noodles brand in India. In fact, it went through a very difficult period in India when it had to recall its product for safety purposes. But look at the strength of the brand. In spite of not being in the market for several months, when the product was relaunched, it was met with same euphoria. So if you are a company which is trying to enter this kind of a market and you have a competitor like Maggi, which has built such a big brand, which is trusted by the customers or which is loved and adored by the customer, this becomes the source of competitive advantage. So not necessarily physical resources lead to competitive advantage. Even intangible like brand tend to lend themselves as very strong precursors for competitive advantage. Look at Lilly, and like Lilly, there are many organizations in the pharmaceutical industry, Pfizer, Merck, and many others. They tend to invest a lot in R&D and they build these large patent pools. Now, if they hold on to a patent, that becomes a differentiator because till they hold on to the patent, a competitor cannot have access to the same, or they will have to pay a high, hefty royalty to gain access. Again, these things become a strong source of competitive advantage for the firms. And finally, to look at organizational processes as source of competitive advantage, no better example than the ones that I have put out here. India has seen a very robust growth in services. TCS and Wipro have been one of the pioneers in this field. And if you look at it, what is their strength? Yes, they have access to perhaps good talent, engineering talent. Yes, they have access to computers and internet services now, but that is something which a competing firm might also lay its hand on. But something that they have perfected over several years now is their ability to organize these disparate resources and deliver on a project year after year after year. So here the organizational processes and systems have emerged as a source of competitive advantage. And this is what is letting these firms compete and outperform some of the other firms in their industry.
So with those examples that we discussed, I'm sure that you would have got a fair idea of what actually resource-based view argues when it comes to looking at how firms compete and build competitive advantage in the market. So primarily what resource-based view argues is that for you to be successful in the market, you need to have competitive advantage over your competitors in the market, and that you gain through having access to some critical resources. And what are the qualities that we look in these resources? Valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. If a resource can provide you with these four essential qualities, then that's a very critical resource for you to gain competitive advantage in the market. Of course, if you keep knocking off these qualities from a resource, then that resource will play a very small or no role at all in determining of how you perform in the market. So with that, let me bring this video to an end. In the upcoming video, we will look at the video model which has been built on top of resource-based view, and we will look at how a simplistic but a very powerful approach through video model can tell you how to evaluate a resource and how that resource with different qualities eventually provide different outcomes in an organization's quest for competitive advantage. So with that, let me bring this video to an end. Have a lovely time and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.